Hello, and welcome back to week number 8 of the Smart Start Recreational Therapy Insights YouTube channel. I'm your host, Nathan Lemaster, founder of SMART CEUs Hub, and I am so stoked to be going through this series with you as we dive deeper into the world of recreational therapy. Last week, we spoke about documentation best practices. So this is the backbone for clear communication and legal compliance in our field. And today we're going to take it a step further and we're going to explore goal writing and progress notes. So how do we write effective goals and how do we write progress notes in our field? So we're going to get more specific on the types of documentation and how it's done. So without further ado, let's dive right on it. Why is writing clear goals essential for a recreational therapist? Well, establishing precise goals is the foundation of effective treatment, and here's why. It gives direction and focus. Goals give both you and your client a roadmap, clarifying what you're working toward and why. They prevent activity for activity's sake syndrome. So we're not just doing activities just to fill time. We're not the babysitters, as some people say. We're actually providing purposeful interventions. So these goals kind of set that apart. It also increases client motivation. When clients see tangible targets, they're often more motivated to engage in the therapeutic process. They can see the goal. Just like when you're running a mile and you say, I'm going to run to that stop sign there. And then when you get to that stop sign, you say, I'm going to run to that stop sign there. And before you know it, you ran the mile. Okay, clear goals also help them to recognize their own progress and reinforcing the sense of accomplishment. So as we meet these milestones, these baby steps towards our ultimate goals, our long-term goals, we feel accomplished, thus are more motivated. Okay, interdisciplinary collaboration. So goals provide a common language for working with physical therapists, occupational therapists, all the different therapists. And we are all on the same page when we set these goals. We can say, okay, as a recreational therapist, this is what I'm working towards with this client. Now someone else on the other end can say, okay, so that's what they're working on. This is what I need to work on, or maybe I need to reinforce this. I don't know. And then everyone can align their efforts towards helping the client ultimately. How are we going to achieve these outcomes for this client? Having a clear vision of where we're headed helps us choose interventions wisely and measure their impact more accurately. How do you write SMART goals? Yes, SMART goals. That's right. When we talk about SMART goals, we're talking about how our goals need to be written. It's how our objectives are written in each of our courses on SMART CEUs Hub. When we have students take courses, we want them to achieve these objectives to show that they are competent in the information, just like goals when we work with clients. So I'll break down, it's an acronym. So we have goals must be specific. So be clear about the what the client will do. Instead of client will improve social skills, for instance, say client will initiate conversation with a peer during a group activity. So that is a very specific goal because it talks about this is what they will do. They will have done this or they will not have done this, right? And that's how we'll measure whether or not that outcome was met. Okay, your goals are measurable. So measurable is the M in SMART. They include quantitative and qualitative measurements. Okay, for example, a client will initiate conversation at least 2 times per session. So the number 2 is the quantity of times that they must do this in order for that goal to be achieved. Okay, 3, achievable. So SMA, achievable. Goals should be realistic given the client's current abilities. So for instance, they're in a wheelchair, they had a stroke, maybe a long-term goal, possibly in the future, is they'll be walking again, but we'll say, hey, I want you to do a cartwheel. Probably not achievable for that person, maybe yet or ever, but we need to have the goal to be appropriate and achievable for that person. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, relevant. So now we're on to the R in SMART. Ensure the goals with the client align with the client's interests and needs overall. If the client loves music, for instance, set a goal related to singing or playing an instrument as a motivating intervention. So it's something that they actually enjoy doing, and it's relevant because it works towards whatever the outcome or goal was that you have for that patient. And so you picked an intervention that was appropriate. Does that make sense? Okay, and then last, time bound. So the T in SMART, time bound. Give a deadline or a time frame like within 4 weeks or by the end of a month. This also helps with reevaluating progress so that when that week or that month passes, we'll be able to say, did they meet this goal? Do we need to do some changes? And by making each goal a SMART goal, you set the clear target for both the therapist and the client, making progress much easier and to track and to celebrate. So hopefully that makes sense, guys. All right, now we're going to talk about some formats that you can write your progress notes. So you may have heard of SOAP notes. So SOAP notes are subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. That's the SOAP. Okay, subjective means it's the client's perspective, what they say about their experience, mood, or complaints. The O is objective. It's observable, measurable information. Client ambulated 10 feet, for instance. Assessment, so A, your professional interpretation of the situation. So this is what I think based off of this information. And P is the plan. The next steps, modifications that you're going to use, and future goals, if there are any, for that client. Okay, so this is how you would write a SOAP note as a progress note. And you might do that as your daily progress notes for the client. So you might start with the subjective, the client's perspective, then you give what you see, observable facts, then you go into your interpretation of these facts plus what they said, and then you create a plan for the future. Another type of format for writing progress notes is called DAP. So this one is data, assessment, and plan. Data combines subjective and objective info into a concise snapshot of what happened. Very similar to how your SOAP, so the S and the O, work together in this case. Assessment, your interpretation or clinical impression, which is what your assessment was in the last type of note, and your plan. So really the only difference between a DAP and a SOAP note is that you're combining objective and subjective data in the first part of your note. I mean, not much of a difference. All right, your third type of note could be narrative notes. Okay, so this might be a different way you structure it. A more free-form style that tells the story of the session. So you might write your note, Johnny came to our session at 3 p.m. Where we were doing Whose Line Is It Anyway? And we were working on communication skills. Johnny's goal for the session was that he was going to get up in front of the group and, act out an improv scene showing assertive communication. When Johnny got up in the group, he visibly was nervous, as evidenced by the way he was grabbing his hands and putting his head down. And, by the end of the session, Johnny was smiling. He was saying hi to everyone. He seemed like he had an enjoyable time. And I asked him what he thought, and he reported that he felt a lot more confident and that he understood what assertive meant. That could be a note, right? You can write that even shorter and concise. Linking to goals. So this could be another way. Regardless of the format, always reference the client's goals in your note. Okay. For example, the client demonstrated X behavior related to goal number 2 of social interaction skills that maybe you're working on, and they initiated conversation once and maintained it for approximately 2 minutes. Very short, concise, measurable, specific, all of that. All right, these formats can help you structure your notes to make note writing a little bit easier. As I said before, you might want to use them as a template to help make your note writing efficient. All right, some practical tips and common pitfalls that we might face or you might face. Okay, so let's talk about a few tips to keep your goals and progress notes effective and relevant. 1, stay objective and concrete. Use measurable outcomes. For example, the number of repetitions, duration, and frequency that you saw this behavior, whenever possible. Avoid vague terms like improved. So if you're saying the client just improved this, right? What did they improve and how do you know they improved it? What did you see? So be more specific and with your observations. Regularly review and update. If a client achieves a goal, go celebrate it. Say, hey, you did a great job. Then create a new one. We always need something to work towards. Okay, if they're struggling, consider adapting the goal or intervention to meet them where they're at. Okay, then we're going to maintain consistency. Refer to the same goals across different notes. So if I write one note and we say we're working towards right side mobility, and then in my next note, we're still working towards right side mobility. And each time we're showing progress towards achieving that goal. Till that goal is met, my notes are going to be that way. They're going to maintain that same consistent, goal that we're working on. Okay, we're going to avoid jargon. So keep your language clear in your note. If someone outside of rec therapy reads your note and they don't know what you're talking about, your note really isn't that effective. So we want to use jargon that everyone can understand. But I like to put a caveat on this. So for instance, PT, so sometimes PT doc means patient, right? You might write that in your note. Could also mean you're writing PT like physical therapist. Might be confusing. Okay, so when you're saying with, right? Sometimes with is a W and a slash. Sometimes it's a C and a slash. I don't know where the C goes from, but sometimes it's written that way. Sometimes it's the word with. So spell out your notes. Just spell out the words in your notes. That leaves so much confusion. It takes away all of that from communicating, and that is really important. So remember, your documentation should tell the story of growth and change. Make sure it's detailed enough to show the client's evolving capabilities while also being concise and easy to follow. All right, now we're on to our wrap up and takeaway. Let's recap. 1, goal writing. We use the SMART framework: specific, measurable, accurate, relevant, and timely. Okay, progress notes. Link each session's notes to these goals using a structured format like SOAP notes, DAP notes, or a narrative style, whatever works for you. 3rd, we're going to do a regular review. Keep goals up to date, keep them consistent to track their progress over time. All right, that's it for week number 8 of the Smart Start, where we talked about progress notes and treatment goals. And next week, if you stay tuned, we're going to be talking about effective group facilitation techniques. So how do we lead groups effectively? We're going to go into the dynamics of group management. Okay, and if you found this video helpful, which hopefully you did, please like this video and subscribe. It really does help this channel grow. It'll also help a lot of other RTs discover this content, and hopefully it's used in a lot of different places. And guys, I hope you have a good rest of your week. I know you're just starting out. And as always, recreational therapists, don't forget to stay classy.